Well, this video, I'd like to talk a little bit about not just the power of our words and our language, but the reason that our words and our language are so powerful, and how that can relate to this path that I'm describing and this journey. How we can help that journey unfold more fluidly. So there are a lot of different teachings and traditions that talk about the power of the word, and a lot of people will, when I was first learning a lot of alternative spiritual messages over the years, I found a lot of in yogic and a lot of the more ancient traditions, they talk a lot about very specific words. And I know people who even in a meditative practice will use Sanskrit words. Sanskrit is supposed to be very powerful. The resonance of the words is supposed to be very powerful. And I have always, well, not always, but for about the last 35 years, I became aware of, through Ascended Master teachings mostly, I became aware of the importance of words, in the sense that not only that words have power, but that the idea from my viewpoint was that you're careful the words you use, because you're putting, because there's power in them. For example, when I talk about the violet flame, it's very powerful. And the words after I am significantly matter. And so, 35 years ago, I started to realize how important that was. And to be very clear, I have used, I'll say backwards, low vibration words after those two words consistently throughout this time. At varying points in my life, I've had stages where I've gotten charged up and put forth some more effort in a direction, in a spiritual growth direction. And at those times, I get real focused and clear. And even in those times, because it's so ingrained, I'll use things all the time like, oh, I'm so broke, or I'm you might say something derogatory about yourself. Oh, I look terrible in this outfit, or oh, I look sick today. All of those things are all like ways that you're contributing to those vibrations. But what I've more recently come to understand is that the words themselves carry power only in the degree that they carry emotion. So emotions are the things that we are most called to be aware of. And the words bring emotions with them. And that's why it matters. We have assigned emotional content to various words, the same way we do with music and songs and stories. And, there's so many things we attach, multi-sensory things together. And so the power of a word is not the power of the letters and the sound. The power is the thought that it carries. And so using Sanskrit words is perfect if you have learned a meaning and attach them to that Sanskrit word. And so you're in meditation and you want to use Sanskrit words. It isn't the thing that matters the most. The thing that matters the most is our thoughts and the verbalization of our thoughts. And so when I say, I'm so broke, for example, I am radiating the emotion that goes along with that phrase. The emotion is lack, the emotion is needy, the emotion is, it's all like more or less disappointed, sorrowful. You can bring in so many things that go with it, but the basic sound of it, the basic emotion of it is you rarely are going to say, oh my God, I am so broke. Although I will say I do that sometimes now. But the point about it is because normally you're seeing that as a negative. And so this is where the importance of those words is. It's about the feeling. When I do toning for my chakras, and I even checked in with this about this with my guides, it's, they're very clear. The words don't matter. I can use the words that yogic traditions will say, Lam, Vam, Ram, Yam, Ham, Om. I could do that. And I could say peanut butter and jelly. I mean, it doesn't matter. What matters is that while I'm making the sound I'm making, I'm at a particular tone, a frequency, and I am thinking of a color and an emotional content of that particular chakra. And those are the things that have the power. It's all the stuff that's up in here, right? With the exception of the frequency, the sound is frequency. So sound is vibration. Words are vibration too, but they're just, how they are associated with our consciousness is all about the meaning behind the words that we use. So, I find myself sometimes I want to talk about things, but I want to say them in a way that's deeper than how it sounds. And the reason is because a lot of things that we say, even though they have emotional content to them, we say them commonly in such a way that their significance is diminished. And I'm always trying to find a way to go a little deeper with these words. So a way that I want to describe an example of that, which is also a significant thing. So we may say, some people don't say it much, and other people say it all the time, but this phrase, I love you. I love you. When we say it, most of us, I believe, when we say it, I love you, there's a softness, there's a warmth. There is definitely a positive emotion that goes with it. But it is a minuscule shred in those words of the vast emotional content that can be associated with that. There are so many kinds of love, so many ways to love. And so that's why sometimes you can say those words and they don't feel, someone could say those to you and they don't feel very significant. You may say them to someone and they don't feel very significant. It's not because the words aren't significant, but they are a very poor representation of a particular, whatever that vibration is. So, but if you look at the emotion behind the words, you can get clues to some things, you can learn some things. So when I talk about the great unfolding and I say, see what presents itself, like relax and see what unfolds in front of you, and then make choices, take actions, release attachment to outcome, relax, and observe what comes in front of you, right? So that includes emotions that present themselves to you. So I had an experience the other day, because this beautiful, freaky, fabulous journey of being human is so filled with adventure. And we're never, I honestly think that the more progress we make, the more childlike we become. And that's by, it's by the nature of what a child is. So in our culture, well, now I'm going to get all mixed up. Let me say this more clearly. So I had an experience where I wrote a text message to someone that I said, and it's unusual for me to be so simple in my words. I just said these very simple words, and it was, I love you. And I didn't say anything else, and I left it at that. And in the saying of it, I knew that I was taking a thought that I had, it was this beautiful feeling that I was carrying that had I had no attachment to it in that moment in particular. I had no attachment to outcomes, no attachment to the significance of it, no attachment to the reception of it. I just had a sense that rose in me, an impulse to say that, to express that. And so I did. And in my flow, I often just, I'll do and say things. If I get an impulse, I'll do or say something. I have no idea in particular why I was driven to it, no particular idea what the outcome, but I know that there was a reason for it to be done, and so I follow that. And I know that I may never know the reason. Now I'm getting into my intuition and psychic things, so I want to stay focused. This particular message, I looked at the message in the phone after I sent it. I looked at those words on my phone, and I drew in all of the emotions, all of the feelings that go with what those words meant with that particular person. How much, how deeply that love was, how every nuance of that individual, I felt that, every cell, how I could feel that about somebody, that every aspect of them in a beautiful, open heart, loving way. Just like this pure emotion. But what happened is, I looked at those words on my phone. I experienced those emotions for this person, and suddenly everything went flat. And I said, oh my God, why can't I feel that way about myself? Like it was like in a cartoon where a safe falls out a window and smashes you onto the sidewalk. And I recognized in that moment, it was just another epiphany moment. I was like, And it was coming out of this place where this work I've been doing lately has really, especially the power of positive aspects with Abraham Hicks and Esther Hicks. There's a lot of awareness that you build about your emotional state, and about how if you want to create a reality, you have to feel the emotions of the thing that you are dreaming into your world. And I sat there and I realized, if I were to say those words to myself, could I have that same level of devotion? Because I've always seen myself as someone who can love with a tremendous depth, of devotion and compassion and openness. Like, I am incredibly allowing to the people that I love. I so easily forgive. I see beyond anything that comes up that in there, I can see so clearly their walls, their emotional blocks. I can see so much that I don't even let on. I see so much in them, and my heart just opens, and I see their beauty and their innocence, and all of this stuff that I'm describing. That, I mean, it makes me feel good to feel that way about someone. But in that moment, I understood in every fiber of my being that I had not and would not feel those same ways about myself. That if I were to put myself on the other side of that text message. Now, this is where I said we can say things that feel light, because I could say to you, it's a beautiful practice to tell yourself, I love you. To me, that I would say, I love you, Linda. You are, I am. So I do the affirmations, I am, right? But what about the emotions of that? Okay, so you could say, every time in my affirmations, when I say I am love, I don't include myself. I didn't notice that. Like, I never noticed that. Like, I put myself out of the picture. It was like, and I could say that and I could feel it so deeply, like, I love everything and everyone. And it's so easy for me. I just have that. And I realized I did not feel that way about myself. That I have in positive aspects, they would talk about contrast. I have contrast against myself, against loving myself that fully. So I'm not saying I don't love myself at all. I'm talking about the depth that I was describing, right? That juicy, rich depth. Like, I couldn't have said that about myself, right? It's the Achilles heel of my life, of this life of mine. And I'm guessing that it's true for many, 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 many of us. And what I have come to understand about it, and I have been unraveling this, and I have been turning it around. And but one of the things about it, I came to realize that in my generation, at least, I grew up at a time when it was really frowned upon for anyone to think highly of themselves. And there's plenty of times throughout history and plenty of cultures where this is a very powerful message. You should not be proud and conceited and boastful and all these things that we put in this negative thing, we attach a negative emotion to it. And, you know, we probably could write books on where that all started, or, you know, what its original basis is. But, and for many of us, we look at some of these young people today who seem so easy. They're like, they have no qualms about talking about how wonderful they are. And for some of us, it just gets right under our skin. We're like, how could they do that, you know? I'm talking about myself anyway. I would see during COVID, I kept seeing all this stuff about the Kardashians. I didn't know anything about them, but the news was very patchy. I didn't have there wasn't a lot of news coming in my news feed. And all of a sudden I'm seeing all this like stuff about Kim Kardashian. And I'm like, well, what's that all about? And I started looking into it and I was like, what the hell? And then I came to realize, I started to look deeper and I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this idea that you could make a whole life presence about how fabulous you are. And we all know that people who talk like that, they don't necessarily feel any different than what I just described, although they might. The point about it is, everything, of course, is within reason. You can be too much of anything. But in an attempt to prevent people from going off on, you know, whatever the darkest edge of that is, which I guess it could lead you to isolation. And, you know, you could, if it was brought to the extreme, if you only cared about yourself and not your part in everything, I guess that could be a problem. There's ways it could be a problem. But my point is, those are the messages that stop us from that self-love. And I started thinking about it. I remembered very clearly as a child when I was told, there were a couple messages I got loud and clear that I was not to speak highly of myself. Other people could, but I couldn't. I was shamed, literally shamed. And I was a little kid. I was a very, very little kid. And it shocked me. I didn't understand. I'm like, people are saying, you're so cute. Oh, she's so cute, or she's so pretty, or she's so this. And then I said it of myself. I'm, you know, whatever. And my parents were like, oh, don't you ever say that again. You know, like that kind of thing. I remember it so clearly. That's how profound of a paradigm shift it was for me. And in that period of time when I was given those messages, and there were more than just one, I became ashamed of thinking highly of myself. And so what would happen is, not only did I shut down a lot of self-love, it actually opens the door for all the self-hate that comes later when you start getting those, the messages that start making you hate yourself, that are always external. They're always starting out external. And then it made me, as I got older, when I did think highly of myself, I had to keep it on the down low. So I had to secretly, like this and that, you know, it's like, you know, secretly, like I might say, you know, I might do a drawing, like secretly, this thing rocks. I love it. I can't believe how much I love this piece of art that I just created. But I wouldn't go out into the world and say that. Why? So anyway, I think some of that is changing in our culture because children today are being much more encouraged in that way, which many of us coming from my generation and older, it gets under our skin, rubs us the wrong way sometimes because we keep thinking something's not right about that. But I want to say that something is right about that. Something is very right about that. And so what I started doing over the last few days is, I don't have a picture of it right here by me, but I have one of my pictures when I was little, like this. I've shown this before. I love this picture of myself. Actually, I think it goes like this, but I just love the vibe of that little girl. She's so chill. She's just thinking about things. You could say she's waiting for the next thing to present itself. She's so relaxed and she feels good about herself. I promise you. At this age, I felt so good about myself. And then I have another picture and I'm sitting on the floor and I've got my blanket and I think I'm sucking my thumb. I sucked my thumb a lot as a little kid. But because I felt, and that made me feel good. And I had my blanket and that made me feel good. Anyway, I have pictures of myself when I was really young. And actually, some of them, I have my hair pulled back like this and everything. So I look at pictures like that. I know that was before I got self-conscious. That was when I thought everything was wonderful. I danced all the time. I was a little ballerina and I felt like everything was wonderful and I was wonderful and what a great experience I was having. And so what I started doing, and I can look at older pictures of myself even as an older child, and I know that I had already lost it. It's like I had lost so much of that original sense of self. And so what I started doing is I started imagining myself when I'm looking out into the world. I am wearing I'm wearing the body and the look and the essence of my child self of that time, my little toddler, little girl self who was so innocent and had so much purity still. And so I have at other times in my life, I've tried to reconnect. I've done a lot of personal work where, you work on reconnecting with your child and everything. But this is like another layer of it. And it's where I'm just like, I am that child. And it's hard to emotionally connect that if you try it. It's tricky because part of you, your logical mind doesn't want to do it. So it takes some effort. But it is the coolest thing. Like then I can start walking around. I can be very literal in my mind. So in a way, I'm like this giant of my little girl self. But I can see it and I can feel it. And it started to help me unravel that shame and that resistance to just being able to say to myself, I love you, and mean it the way that I meant it for everybody else. Like I'm getting there. Like I feel really good. And what started to happen is, it's crazy, but what started happening is a lot of my insecurities, at least as of the last few days, it's like I don't feel a lot of those darker emotions that I was feeling a lot of times. It's interesting. So anyway, I know it's on the heels of so many more things that I've done, but I do suspect that anybody could start pulling that back in just by going back to the time in your life when you were young, a time, if you couldn't connect with it, when you didn't know you didn't know shame. You didn't know self-consciousness. It's one of the things we love so much about children. The way that children move through life, they're so carefree. They're just, their joy is just unbridled, and they don't hold back. They just say things to each other. And they may have flare-ups, and then those flare-ups, they like come at each other and then they're gone, and it's, hey, you want to go do this or that. So, I mean, it's a beautiful thing. So, so my thought is that, you know, maybe in addition to, or in combined with the work of saying, you know, I'm trying to reconnect with my inner child, just use your imagination, your beautiful, fabulous imagination, the most magnificent part about being human, the very capacity we have to create with our minds. Create for yourself, and imagining that you, in your eyes looking out, are looking out from that child, that child that you really still are. But that might help you feel the actual emotion of that actually is who you are. Anyway, that is something that I had just come to, and I felt like that does relate to all of this work. I mean, I know that I have been with my, you know, doing my morning meditation and my chakra tuning and all of the things that I'm doing, are also helping me with the process. And I will talk more about those things, but there are some little simple things we can do to try to help us, even in a particular moment when we're struggling. You know, you're struggling, you don't know what to do. Just be that child for a moment, because we might say as adults, we look at children with that carefree attitude and we say, oh yeah, but that's because they didn't have all the worries that we have, and they didn't have to pay the bills, you know. Listen to Abraham Hicks for a while. That is a whole nother study. But the point is, it is something we do to ourselves as adults, and it's not necessary. It doesn't have to be that way. We bought into that we have to be that way, and then we created it, we magnified it, we continued it emanating out into the world. So at any point, we can stop doing that, each of us individually. So anyway, hopefully that was helpful. I may have had something else I was going to talk about, but this is what came up. Hopefully it's helpful, and if it is, I certainly would love it if you have paid this much attention, if you would like and follow me on the Great Unfolding Facebook page and the Great Unfolding YouTube channel. Either both, that would be lovely.